Good afternoon and a very warm welcome to this edition of the Citizens Chat Show, streaming on YouTube on Civic Space TV. I'm your host, Judith Atim, and you might be wondering why I've designated this a special edition. But here's why. Well, today we are dedicating our entire focus on this show to a critical, often overlooked, yet profoundly impactful issue. And what's that? The Ugandan government's proposed amendments to the legal framework governing the work of non-governmental organizations and civil society organizations. And many times we tend to dismiss legal issues as tedious or boring. We find them maybe too elitist sometimes, overly technical, but these are precisely the issues that we need to be paying closer attention to, because they demand a lot of our attention, our rigorous attention, of course, because they have very, very deep implications, not just for our society, but also for our daily lives. And today, our esteemed panel of experts will be demystifying these proposed amendments. They'll also help us explain the complexities of these legal proposals, and importantly, they're going to tell us why, as a Ugandan citizen, you should be genuinely concerned. I am honored to have with me Dr. Sarah Bireete from my immediate left. She's the Executive Director, Center for Constitutional Governance. Warm welcome, Dr. Sarah Bireete.
Thank you, and good afternoon, viewers.
Next to her is Ms. Nancy Caroline Ayot. She's a feminist lawyer and writer. Always a pleasure having you on Civic Space TV.
Thank you. This is my first time on the chat show, and I'm very happy to be here.
Yes, next to Nancy, of course, is Mr. Robert Kirenga, who is the Executive Director, National Coalition of Human Rights Defenders. Robert, welcome to the show. Your very first time here.
It's my first time in these studios.
And
thank you, Judith.
But he has been on the channel.
Yes.
I've been on the channel before. Thank you for hosting me.
Thank you. We're glad you could make it. And last but not least, of course, is Mr. Godber Tumushabe, Executive Director, Great Lakes Institute for Strategic Studies. Warm welcome, Mr. Tumushabe.
Very delighted to be here. Thank you, Judith, and good afternoon, our viewers and listeners.
Okay, so this is a conversation which might sound boring, but like I said, it's really, really important. But to make it more relatable, I'd like all of you, and of course all of us here in the show, to give it a human face. And in so doing, of course, I'd like us to know, when we're talking about non-governmental organizations or civil society organizations, many times all citizens have, of course, engaged or benefited in one way or another from the services of these entities. And we understand they're important, of course, to the health and progress of our society. But what specific functions, if someone is watching us and listening and they're like, but these NGOs, I don't even know what they do. How do you make them understand and appreciate the crucial work that civil society organizations and NGOs perform? I'll start with you, Dr. Sarah, then.
I think really NGOs, in simple words, and why the citizens must pay interest. These are spaces for citizens generally to participate in governance, in service delivery, in matters of holding leaders accountable. A citizen can, participate in their governance either through civic or political organizations or in their individual capacities. So it's one of the ways. If you cannot do it as an individual, you do it with a group of people in civic or political organizations. So that means that the way they are regulated should be the interest of the citizens, because these are their spaces that they create to advance matters of national importance. I think that's my simple take.
Thank you. Nancy, I'll come to you last because I want the perspective of the youth, seeing that you are the youngest person on the panel. So I'm going to move right to Godber, and then I'll come to Robert.
Yes.
So
you really want to ask us the date of birth?
So why should I care as a citizen about the role that civil society organizations and NGOs play in our society?
Yeah. Basically, I'll add on what Sarah just said, that at the core of any society is the citizen. So you as a citizen, me as a citizen, you out there as a citizen. So we say we are citizens of Uganda. And we have certain rights and responsibilities. The Constitution gives us certain rights, gives us powers. Power belongs to the people are the citizens. But actually, in actual sense, the exercise of that power, that responsibility, those rights is only possible when citizenship is aggregated. So as an individual, you can be able to exercise certain rights, but for you to actually be able to enjoy these rights and responsibilities, there is a certain level of aggregation that is necessary. Because when citizens aggregate, they also become power centers. So as an individual citizen, your power is limited because you are an individual. So eventually society then is organized in what we call citizen formations. Citizen formations are organized around interests. So in other words, you'll find they are let's say they are economic formations of citizens. So citizens who are interested in organizing around economic power. So you'll find them, now you have circles, you have cooperative societies, you have investment clubs. These are citizens formations organized around economic interests. You can think of, in this country, we're organized around religion. So citizens organized around religion. So when you're contesting power with the state, the Catholic Church will come out and say, oh, our people are not being treated well, the Protestant Church, the Adventist Church. So these churches, so these formations become our citizen power centers. This country, we're organized around culture or tradition. So what you see as kingdoms, as cultural institutions, that's citizen organizing. So these citizens that organize around their cultural institution, they have power. So in the actual sense, so you can go on and look at the different formations. So within this broader civic organizing, I always look at NGOs as the professional. Because the NGOs come up, because normally you find that they are actually formations of professional people, and they provide value. So in other words, you have citizens who are interested in promoting human rights. So you find them organized in human rights formations. You have citizens who are interested in service delivery. So they are organizations that have been organized to be able to provide, to provide water, to provide healthcare, and advocate for different things. So you look at NGOs as these formations of citizens that are organized around certain professions. But also there are all those then that are professional organizations like lawyers and engineers and others. So I think what Uganda needs to understand is that any serious government that respects its people must be enacting legislation that enables citizens to organize themselves, because that's where the value comes from. The only problem that we have now with our government here is that sometimes I even try to separate between the government and this regime, because I know there are many people in the government, in the formal government of Uganda, that actually understand these things and respect them. But here we are dealing with an authoritarian regime whose only survival is dependent on how much it can demobilize institutions of citizenship. Yeah, so it has been able to demobilize institutions of citizenship that we call political parties or that we call professional bodies. It has co-opted cultural institutions. It has co-opted religious leaders. And now it has co-opted trade unions, because that's how citizens are organized. Now it comes to the professional civil society, which are the NGOs. And because they are not able to do the kinds of things they do with other formations, because the other formations, they give them some money, they do this. Sometimes most of us who are organized within the NGO context, sometimes we don't need a lot. We have some little money, so you are not going to come and start pretending that you are government, you are buying me. But also me, I'm also more civic conscious. I know when you come to buy me, I know you're using my money. Because you don't have money, you're using the tax that I paid you. So I look at you with contempt. That's the challenge that the regime now has with the NGOs. So that's why you see the kind of restrictions that you keep on seeing coming up.
Which we're certainly going to delve into just very shortly.
Yeah.
Robert, your quick submissions, of course. Why should I be concerned that, the government is getting tougher on NGOs coming up with these regulations? What do I, as an ordinary citizen, benefit from these institutions?
Thank you, Judith. I think the first thing as any ordinary citizen should know is to look at those gaps in terms of the different sectors, whether it's the social sector, whether it's health, education, that you think government has failed to fulfill its human rights obligations. That's the obligation to fulfill human rights. And thereby, when you see those gaps, you will appreciate why even the drafters of our 1995 Constitution put in a specific provision that talks about the citizens having a right to participate in the governance affairs of their country through either elected representative or civic organizations or NGOs like ours, because they really understood the root problem, that this country's problems cannot only be solved by government. We all come from different settings, whether in the urban or rural, where you know that citizens wake up and do a road when we know that this is a duty of government. Why do they wake up and do it? Why is it that Rotarians also come and tell you that, look, we can't wait for government to do everything? So any citizen would be concerned that where there are gaps in terms of service delivery, NGOs come to complement government. Government cannot employ everybody. You all know that. We all cannot be absorbed by the civil service or any other department or agency of government. Civil society employs people. But the most important thing is that constitutional obligation. If citizens cannot come out to organize themselves, empower themselves with these NGOs, then it becomes very difficult for you to demand for accountability from government or duty bearers. Because now you fold your arms and say, well, it is the government doing this, there's nothing we can do. But when NGOs empower you, I'm going to give you a vivid example. This government came into being in 1986. I went together through legal notice number 1. Over time, they came up with a constitutional making process. From the time this constitution was promulgated in 1995, tell me the efforts of government to ensure that citizens understand the Constitution. How often has this Constitution been translated into the 50 what? Local languages. So when the founders of Center for Constitutional Governance come up, they have identified this gap, and the government is not about to address it. In other words, to empower citizens to understand this constitution, which is the supreme law that governs this country. So, to you, an ordinary citizen, if you think that these NGOs are just entities that are there that do not add value to your life, you need to think twice. The best you can do is to think back and say, why do NGOs exist? So, in other words, think and question. Because without NGOs, it becomes really a society where you've handed over all your rights, which are inherent to a government, to an entity called government. So NGOs play a key role in the social, economic, and political development of this country, and that's why they are formed. But when they are also formed, they are not at free will to do anything, and that's why they are regulated. You get it? And the NGOs also accept to be regulated. So how you regulate them matters. And since these are citizen-driven, you ought to make sure that whatever laws and policies you make must be enabling, as opposed to disenabling, because they play a very big role in as far as the socio-economic transformation of this country is concerned. The biggest challenge we have currently in the current context is that with a population that is really not well informed and empowered, the state has decided to politicize the work, simply because they know that these NGOs are empowering citizens, one, to know their rights, two, demand and defend their rights. And any government that is not democratic will always want a society that is disempowered, a society that is fundamentally poor and living on handouts. And that is the contradictions that we have in this context between the state and the role of NGOs.
Thank you, Robert. Nancy, we come to you. Give us the youth perspective. And I mean, I would like you to just speak to a young person out there and try to make a case for why they should actually care or be bothered if there's bad regulation coming up that would threaten the operations of NGOs. And of course, let them understand why NGOs and CSOs are important.
Thank you very much. Usually when I put up something on my social media, today I say I attended a meeting with WooNet, tomorrow I say I'm on Civic Space TV, then another day I say I attended an equip circle with Farmfort. My friends be like, but you're like, what do you like do? Most of the time they'll be like, what do you do? And I'm like, I'm a lawyer. Right now I'm interning at Center for Constitutional Governance, but Farmfort, and I'm like, but they called me because I'm a young person and I have a voice in certain things and I can reach out to you people. And most of the times it's confusing. They're like, so they called you, but why did you go? Do they like give money? And I'm like, oh yeah, sometimes. And I'm like, yes, sometimes. And then they're like, can I come? And I'm like, it's not because they give the money.
Yes.
And it's not because of the money. But we are so removed from issues of we are so unaware. There's a lack of awareness among young people on the roles that certain institutions play, but also on the general structure of governance in this country, which is a sad thing. And usually I tell people, look at the budget. Today, this happened in Parliament because these things directly affect you. They affect how you operate, they affect what you eat, and they also affect how you relate with other people. Now, coming down to the understanding of a young person, I'm going to give you the perspective, from my perspective as a young lawyer who has barely had time to practice, as a young woman, but also as a person very interested in the politics of this country. The very first time I came into contact with the NGO world as a young adult, I was at university, and someone told me, do you want a gig? And I said, a gig? What are we going to do? A gig is where you go and work for some money. And they're like, no, you don't have to do anything. Just go and sit down in a meeting. Let's go and sit down in a meeting, sign, and come out. And I was like, nice, where? And they said, Fairway Hotel. And I'm like, there's food. And they're like, yes, there is food. But we went, and the conversation was around abortion, safe abortions, contraceptives for young women. And this was work that was being done by an NGO in collaboration with the university leaders. Some of these gaps that the precurrent speakers talked about exist every day. The reason why you know about the budget is because Nancy went to an NGO meeting, or Nancy works for an NGO that cares about the budget. The reason why you know that some roads are closed is because you don't go out in the morning and you just run into it smack, because the NGOs talk about what the government is going to do. Some of these things don't make it to the news, and young people hear about it like that. But to bring it home, as a person who is from northern Uganda, a lot of the work that has been done by NGOs was to sustain communities in the worst possible times when it was impossible for government to reach people, in terms of services, when there were no toilets because the war had cleared out everything and people were living in camps, but also for pregnant mothers, building shelters for pregnant mothers to access basic medical services at the hospital so that they don't have to travel such long distances when they're already in labor. But as a young person who has also interacted closely with the with the political space. I know that the NGOs have sustained youth advocacy a lot and has sustained youth institutions in demanding for accountability. Most of the youth institutions and the organizing bodies that they form, small, are facilitated by the NGOs. And I know that at the budget, at the national, the State of the Nation address, the president said that one of the issues we have as a country is the negative activism against the government. I had it very clearly because it was at the beginning of his speech, and I realized that this was a direct attack on the NGO world. And I do not think that this law review is a positive one. Somebody could think about it and be like, no, we're doing assessment, this is for assessment, this is to make things better. But I feel like there's already so much bureaucracy on how these institutions operate, and the civic space will continue to shrink and information will become scarce. But also the lack of awareness will deepen among people, which for me is a very dangerous thing, because if you do not know where you're going to run smack into a wall, and there is nothing that you're going to do about it. Yes, that's my understanding.
Thank you very much. So now that takes us to the gist of the discussion, the regulation and navigating it. And I'm coming to you, Sarah. Of course, like Robert said, every entity or every organizational formation has to be regulated and is already regulated in our case here in Uganda. The NGOs and CSOs are regulated just like cultural institutions, like religious institutions, like so many other. If we are to look at the current legal framework that regulates the activities and operations of NGOs and CSOs, and we look at the proposals that are coming up, Sarah, I'd like you to, first of all, give us a context, a brief understanding of what the current situation is like, and then you look at what these proposed amendments are, just so that we can have an understanding of what is coming and what the implications are.
So over time, the NRM government perceives regulation to mean prohibition.
And control.
Yeah, and control.
Yeah.
Whereas the objective of the NGO Act is to create an enabling environment for NGOs, there are issues that are prohibitive in the NGO Act. And through assessment, some of these issues include, for example, definition of an NGO. If an NGO has some members who are non-Ugandan, then it's considered as a foreign NGO. Even if these are members on the board, they are not even founders, it's considered a foreign NGO. And that is really strange. It's like NGOs are, confined in the territorial integrity of Uganda as a nation and should not go across. Yet in other countries, it's even easier to go and register an NGO and do whatever you want to do, and nobody's, describing according to your sovereignty. And that's one of the issues that should be changed. The other issue that is really prohibitive is, for example, the community-based organizations. Their defined identity, their legal identity, they are denied legal identity, their area of work scope is limited, and that prohibits them from, for example, opening a bank account or even fundraising. Because if you have no legal identity, you can't open a bank account. Which donor will give you money to do your work? So it's like they must fund their work, or the communities they work in. If they have means, it would be good if they can fund their work. But most of the time you are dealing with poor and vulnerable communities who can't even fund their work. If you look at the reporting mechanism in the NGO Bureau and the regulations, the multiple centers of power, the district, the sub-county, the national, getting an MOU in a very district you need to work in, even when you are registered as a national NGO, you need to go and keep getting multiple memorandums of understanding in a very district.
Clearance by
you find that really that is burdensome. The composition of these monitoring committees at the district is also problematic. You find that sometimes the representatives of the NGO is not even known. I took time to know the representative of NGOs at KCC. It was like a myth. So you look at, you go to KCC and they say you have a representative. Say, but why is this representative? They also tell you that we've never seen him or her. And then I got to know us after so long, like 2 years. And I will withhold the name, which I think should be changed really. So you find, because that person is no longer even in the sector, but he sits in the structure of KCC as a representative of NGOs. So you find that these are some of the challenges and the behavior, of course, of RDCs. There have been issues of money. If you want an NGO, a district NGO committee to sit, they don't have a budget. So it means they cannot approve your MOU or work plan. So you must facilitate them because it is not in the district plan for this committee to sit. So you find some people have been saying districts are asking us for money. Then you meet the districts and they're like, but we don't have a budget. And you want us to sit and approve your work plan. So how do we do it? So you find that some of these, and of course lack of guidance. Mm-hmm. What is their work? What is their mandate? They don't even know their limits. They think they should attend every meeting you are conducting as if it's a right, even when they are not relevant to the subject matter being discussed. And they keep disrupting activities of NGOs. There are also other challenges, including financing, especially misunderstanding of financing. The districts think as if they should get a form of a tax.
From the NGOs?
Yes, the NGOs. And then the NGOs on the other hand are like, what is this? It's not provided for in the law. Mm-hmm. Then you have a role of RDCs that is not mentioned in the policy and act, but features in the regulation as heads of security. Mm-hmm. And they are the most disruptors of the work of NGOs. These are some of the challenges that we thought should be changed in the NGO Act if we are to make the regulation enabling. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, as we were in the middle of this study, government came up with the regulatory impact assessment. According to information from the Bureau, that has been approved at cabinet level. And there are some weird proposals coming from cabinet. Key among them is a proposal to create a basket fund. I know that the issue of a basket fund sounds exciting to some of the up-country NGOs because they think they will have free money the way political parties get money on numerical strength in parliament. They don't know that the impact
First,
of this.
Explain to me how this basket fund will actually work. What the proposal is. The
proposal is that whoever wants to fund.
Where the basket will be.
Yes. The proposal by cabinet is that whoever wants to fund NGOs and is living in Uganda should put money, give money to government. Then also government, through the budget, will create a contribution for NGOs. So together from government, budgetary function, and donors, they will create a basket fund. The way we used to have like DGF, the Democratic Governance Facility that the government has closed. But so the government now wants to burden a taxpayer, because it's important to note that our government cannot fund 100% of their budget. At most they fund 50% and then they go into loans and grants and begging everywhere to fund the budget. Now they want to create an additional obligation of NGOs, meaning they want to borrow more money, saying they want to give it to NGOs, which doesn't make sense. Then on the other hand, like donors based in Uganda, they are using their citizens' funds approved by their parliaments, contributed by their citizens. another government wants to have control of that money of citizens of another country, which doesn't also make sense. And this is a proposal of government. Then they would determine whoever will be a beneficiary of this money that basically doesn't belong to them. Whichever objective they want to fund, now it remains your guess and mine. But we know that government is uncomfortable with work regarding governance, especially accountability for human rights violations, corruption, and other violations. So that's the work they want to phase out because it makes them uncomfortable. The other drive of this money is that this regime looks at money as a tool for power retention. And the conflict with NGOs is they think there is so much money out there that they are not controlling as a regime. So they want to extend this control to be like Father Christmas, and they determine what you have and what you eat, and nobody else has a say in that area. The second proposal that is really weird from cabinet is a proposal that if you cannot give money in this basket fund, then the recipient must obtain prior approval by cabinet to receive money that is outside the basket fund.
So if the donor doesn't comply to put the money, then the NGO or CSO which was supposed to receive that money
must first go to cabinet and say, I am thinking of getting a grant from Open Society Foundation. Can you please give me permission
to get it?
To get it, and then they determine whether you should get it or not. The control of who can access money in the country as a tool for power retention. So the third proposal is borrowed from Tanzania, and we know that there is a really shrinking space or closed space for civil society organizations in Tanzania because of this proposal of creating an apex body for NGOs, like a council of NGOs. In Tanzania, the council for NGOs is led by militant cadres. And these militant cadres are really policing the sector to the extent that they determine what you can do and what they tell you what you can't do. Forgetting that our constitution, under the democratic principles, states that civic organizations have autonomy as to what they want to do and how they can do it. So I don't know whether such a proposal would even require a prior amendment of the constitution, or whether cabinet thought through such proposals, their implications, including wanting to control, for example, and that proposal came from finance, wanting to control money that is a contribution of citizens of another country. And you wonder whether our top-notch technocrats in finance really were thinking properly to come up with such issues or not, and they've been apparently adopted by cabinet. So these are some of the proposals coming out of this regulatory impact assessment. And the government hopes that they will make better the space of the NGOs.
Thank you.
With these proposals, that's what they are telling the people in their consultations.
So let me come to you again, Godber, and then we'll move backwards. When you listen to all these proposed amendments or provisions, what comes to your mind?
A couple of things. A couple of things. One of the first one is the basic one, which I think I've said. You are talking of a cabinet that is redundant.
And also how, of course, it's going to impact not just CSOs, but also the beneficiaries at the grassroots and communities who benefit a lot from the services of CSOs and NGOs.
Yeah, so first of all, you're talking of a cabinet that I think is redundant, because if you reach a point where you want a grant of $7,000 to be approved by cabinet, it means that you really have some busy bodies there. They have nothing to do. Otherwise, it is very easy to think that this 7,000 is a spelling mistake, because I think if you have a group of people that are thinking strategically, you are thinking for the country, and you sit in the cabinet and you say we have approved this, there must be something wrong with you as a people.
So you think it should be $7 million?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if I was cabinet, really, I should be looking at maybe some
Substantive.
$70 million. Yeah, because you see, one of the challenges that we have is that authoritarian regimes have one disease. There's one writer who said, when government fears people, there is freedom. When people fear government, there is tyranny. Now the problem with Uganda is that government and people fear each other. So normally what you have here is anarchy.
Hybrid.
Yeah, you have anarchy. That's how things run here. So you can see it coming through even most of the legislation. That's why we've had cases where you have a law on coffee, on the military. You need an army in the parliament to pass the legislation. You're talking about anarchy. And that anarchy is reflected even in these kinds of pieces of legislation. Because remember that, and I keep on, normally I even advise my colleagues within the NGO community and the civil society. People want to say, I am from civil society. And I say, no, I am not from civil society. I am a citizen of Uganda. So everything that I do it as a citizen. So I'm exercising my civic rights and civic responsibilities. So when I come here and I say, I'm an associate director at GLISS, GLISS is simply a platform. I am not GLISS, because there is no way I can pass my citizenship to an artificial legal person called GLISS. No. My primary basis for engaging in what I do and engaging with government is that I'm a citizen of Uganda. Now, the challenge that we've been having, and Sarah alluded to this, is to say, you have a regime that is so scared of its people, so scared of the citizens, that it looks to control almost each and everything. So that's why they say, even if you have, even if we formed ourselves like now the panel here, if we said we are a group of workers, we are going to be working every week, then they will say you are not registered.
Police will surround you.
Police will surround you. You are not registered. But I mean, why should I register to be able to work? So, what Ugandans need to understand is that whatever legislative efforts you see in the area of civic space and in the area of governance is going to be an effort around control. It's almost everything reads prohibition. Don't do this, don't do that, don't do the other one. Don't do if you do this one, we'll imprison you. If this one, we'll arrest you. That's the laws that we've enacted almost since 2001. And I always share with colleagues that if you want to see differences in countries, you want to compare Uganda with Ghana. So if you look at similar legislation for Ghana, you will see how enabling the legislation in Ghana is. So the Ghanaian legislature is trying to enable you to do things. The law should be enabling me as a citizen to be able to make a contribution to my country. So I come from a research background. The law should be enabling me to do research, to be able to access the information I need to do research. I come from, Bob here comes from a human rights background. The law should be enabling Bob and his organization to extend the kinds of services that citizens need to be able to enjoy their human rights, to enjoy their dignity. So essentially, we, as Ugandans, we need to actually worry that we have a regime that fears us as a people. So every law is to control. So even when they say, we want you to register at the district, it's about control. Because essentially, we are completing the process of evolving into a police state. Because Uganda right now is a police state. Everything police. we have a publication that is coming up called, we looked for a title for this publication, and we ended up, we said, I think the title of this publication is called Guns Everywhere. Yeah? So you look around you, everywhere, everybody's holding a gun. There are those that are conspicuous, and then there's those that are concealed, because the regime fears people. So as Ugandans, we need to see the laws that have been enacted in the area of journalism. They are controlling journalists, cyber laws. They are controlling on how we use our cyber technology. The laws that are the laws that are now the laws you've seen in the military. So basically, declaring this country a military state, because that's what the most recent UPDF amendment does. So the question that we need to be, actually we need to be, no, I don't know whether we should even be asking the question, because we just need to be seeing how do we turn this train, because there is this train, there is the NRM 7 train that is moving full speed authoritarianism. And I think the question that we need to be asking ourselves, how do we turn this train back? How do we regain control as a people? Those rights and the freedoms that are enshrined in the Constitution, the right to organize as a civil society organization, the right to protest, the right to demonstrate, how do we roll back and get those rights back? And all the legislation that has been focused on NGOs now is about how to make sure that we don't roll back. By the way, I should also mention that this country, when you have authoritarian regimes like ours, they also legislate where there is no problem. If you ask them what is the problem, they will not tell you. They will go in circles and talk about this one and say, oh, the reporting, they will say the NGOs, they need to go coordination. I don't need to be coordinated. Coordinated with what? Because I run an NGO to do research. So do I need someone to coordinate me? No, I don't. But they will give those kinds of reasons to be able to do the control. I'll give one last example. You know, when the 1995 Constitution was enacted, was promulgated, we had argued a lot and said we need provisions on access to information. So Article 40, I think it's Article 41, the right of access to information. So for many years, I actually argued with many colleagues, because many of my friends were saying we need a law to facilitate access to information. We call it operationalization. And I kept on arguing them. I said, the way this government does things, if you try to enact a law, it will actually claw back on the other provision.
Yeah, they'll make it difficult.
They will make it difficult for you to get information. So what you need to do is leave it so that the courts can always be the ones to intervene to determine whether your right is being exercised or not. And I can tell you, when the Access to Information Act was finally enacted,
guidelines,
it was basically saying, don't
like for
You
information.
can't get anything. Basically, they say, for
Don't
you to
access.
for you to get, you have to apply. When you apply, you have to pay fees. When you pay fees,
You
Wait for a certain period
you
of
wait for a
time.
certain period. And then finally,
If
the
they-
other person whom you are asking for information has the discretion
to give.
to give.
If
And I said,
you are not satisfied, you go to court.
absolutely. that is the way things happen here. And so in other words, I would say that right now, I don't think that there's anything to legislate around NGOs. If there's anything to legislate, is to dismantle the restrictions that have been imposed. All these silly things that me as a Ugandan, Godber Tumushabe as a Ugandan, who comes from a district called Ntungamo, that for me to go and operate there as a citizen, I need an MOU with the district. I mean, what kind of crap is that? So that's what we need to be. We need to be dismantling these blockages that we have put in place, rather than coming up with unnecessary pieces of legislation.
Thanks, Godber. Robert,
Yes.
of course, your quick thoughts about these provisions, but also the broader implications that this is going to have, not just on the operations of NGOs and CSOs, but also the last mile user of the services from these entities?
Sure. Thank you, Judith. I just want to build on Godber's very good submission. What I really see as implications of this kind of policies and laws is that actually the government of the Republic of Uganda is contradicting its international human rights obligations. There are basically three obligations: the obligation to respect, the obligation to protect, and the obligation to fulfill human rights. And the two major obligations that they are really undermining is the obligation to protect. The obligation to protect means that the state should not interfere with the enjoyment of the rights of citizens. What they are trying to interfere with, right, is the right of citizens to organize into associations such as NGOs by coming up with all these laws and policies that are meant to disenable, restrict, and control them. The other obligation that I find that the state is really undermining is the obligation to fulfill. The obligation to fulfill means that the state has a duty or obligation to create an enabling environment for civic organizations to be formed, thrive, and be able to contribute to the development of this country. So by coming up with these kind of laws and policies that really undermine the work of NGOs, clearly shows you that the obligation to fulfill is not there, but it is there to really undermine the work of these NGOs. What are the implications of this now to the ordinary citizen? To the ordinary citizen, it means that whatever you have been getting from NGOs or civic groups and organizations means they are going to be curtailed. They are going to be curtailed in the sense that where you thought that we are complementing government in terms of creating employment, in terms of service delivery in the different social sectors, whether it's education and health, you will still see that all this will be withdrawn. Two, we all know that we have a corrupt government. That no donor will be very comfortable putting money meant for civil society in a basket fund, and in that basket fund, there is no civil society representation. The state is done to determine who gets what, when, and how. So that shows you that really resource inflows into this country will be curtailed. Last but not least is that citizens will not be able to engage. We have a young population. The demographics indicate that, the dividends indicate that 70% of our population is young people under the age of 30. You can recall, Judith, when you are at 30, what level of empowerment you had. So you can imagine what kind of society these people want us to have as they age and go away.
They are not going.
They don't seem to want to go, but they don't want to go, but they will have to go. Change will make them go. So these are the challenges that really, these are the implications of these laws. And I would really like to urge all young people who can read and write, to get acclimatized with what government is trying to do. It's not hard for you to understand the roles of government, the roles of civic organizations, and you who is above 18, to really understand what are my civic duties. Yes, you know your rights, but what are my civic duties and obligations? And what are the implications of laws? That is the thing. So they pick interest. Do not wait for government to come and tell, come and we'll teach you about your rights, because that will never happen. Yeah. Pick interest in the work of civic organization. Try to empower yourself and say, do these laws and policies that are being imposed at NGOs going to affect my life as a citizen? And don't look at it now and say, that's none of my business. No, it is your business. And the earlier you took interest in it, the better for not only you, but for the entire country.
Thank you. And still on the note of young people, again, I come to you, Nancy. When your colleagues were submitting, right from Dr. Sarah all the way to Robert, I was reflecting on your very first experience as a young person, your first encounter with an NGO, which was dealing with a very important issue for young people, especially young women, sexual and reproductive health rights. And we know these are situations that in most times are emergency situations. For example, a young woman wants an emergency to access emergency contraceptive or any other kind of care that would probably be easier for them to access through maybe a community-based organization or an NGO within their vicinity. Now, when you have these kinds of provisions where an NGO has to write a letter, go through cabinet approval and so on, how cumbersome do you think it is going to be for young people who find themselves in these kinds of situations where they need to access help and they need that help immediately?
Thank you very much. You know, my thoughts are scattered, so bear with me a little bit.
It's okay.
I was noting down when everyone was speaking so that I would not forget. But last month, I ran a pad drive with a colleague of mine to take pads to some of the most disadvantaged girls in West Nile, and we reached out to over 800 girls. And during that process, I think that is the first time I felt the real impact of what a person heading an NGO actually goes through. The hard work, the late nights, the phone calls, and the stress when the money cannot meet the objective that has been put down. And it made me realize that the resolve was that we were reaching out to those girls there, and it was an emergency for them. In fact, they needed the pads yesterday, but you know, we had to do what we could in that situation. So for things like sexual reproductive health, I find it very difficult, and perhaps it is why I am even in governance to begin with, because as a young girl, I found it very difficult to understand how something as basic to your survival as sanitary pads were not free in this country. And when you bring some of these things in conversation, even in political circles, young people, youth circles, the thing that they say is that, you know, we'll come to that later. Let us first free our country.
Let's first free the country.
Let's first free the country. The women's issues and the girls' issues will come later, which is very sad.
After the struggle.
Yes, after the
The
struggle.
bondage, we're in a bondage now.
But you can't postpone a menstrual cycle.
You can't. And these are the things that you realize that you cannot. But also, when you think about it, it gives you perspective on what priorities the government has. Even in our budget, there are things that were funded, but the sanitary towels were removed because they said they were going to fund it in this next budget, but they didn't come through with that. And so it is really sad. So for me, when I look at the entire NGO law review and all those things, I'll ask myself 3 questions. Will there be improved accountability? Will girls and women receive the SRHR services they need? Are we going to strengthen our organizing and collaboration? And I come up with one answer. No, it will not. None of those things will happen. And this is why. My thought is that what the government is trying to do is actually go back to a single party state. So maybe the budget will be read in the NRM, in the NRM caucus the next time. Perhaps the next time they will also be planning the budget from Chankwanzi. Maybe like
that's what happens.
Yes, this, and they will not be hiding it because the speaker is partisan and she doesn't hide it. So I like that about her, because now you know, and you deal with that information the way you like. So she is partisan, and you know that is the direction that they're trying to take. Even with the NGO world, they are trying to. Perhaps we'll have NRM run NGOs, you know, with the yellow bus behind. Every NGO will have the yellow bus logo, and they'll.
There's one answer called Pilau.
It's an NGO.
Yeah, it is an NGO.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, by definition.
It's allowed them to demonstrate.
So for Parliament, which is the heart of democracy, because of its role as a lawmaking body, to come up with such recommendations, it is very sad. And this is the general impact it's going to have on young women, on youth. I believe that the civic participation, which is already small, will cease to exist. It will be for selective individuals. If you say that we are going to put everything in a basket fund and they will decide who to give the money to, we also know that that this same government, the president himself, has come on TV, on radio to say the reason why certain areas do not have services is because they did not vote right. So if the NGOs are in the pockets of the government, who will get services? Nobody. Thirdly, the chilling impact on advocacy. When I began my previous submission by saying the president said there was negative activism, the crackdown on advocacy is going to be worse than it was. And when I say worse than it was, I mean people died. So I don't know what else. Maybe we'll have
The
a
numbers
full-blown
going higher.
Yes, a full-blown war. There will be no hiding, because just because it is law does not mean it is credible. Does not mean it's inclusive. Does not mean it caters to the needs of everyone. And this could be one of the most devastating laws this country will see. But we've had terrible ones. But it also made me wonder if there is actually any post-legislative impact assessment. Do the members of parliament, do they take the initiative to go back and understand how the laws that they've passed affect the people down on ground?
Do they know the laws they pass?
That's
Some
another.
of them don't know.
As long as you can
I need
vote.
to wind up. Yes.
However, this is the better part of the conversation, because the fact remains that whether or not your ID expires, you're still Ugandan. Whether or not your ID expires, the government doesn't own the country. They work for the people. Therefore, you do not owe the government loyalty when they do not deliver the necessary services. It's the social contract. I just wanted to put it in simple terms. You do not owe your MP a vote just because he gave you soap, if he cannot advocate for your hospitals to be improved, if he votes for basic services to be taken away from you. But also now we need to read people from their previous actions. Whenever I come to the show, maybe the women's show or the citizen or the community show, I always tell people that the way you vote is the way you're going to live for the next 5 years or the rest of your life. Because you may not vote the next time, but they will read your vote because you allowed them to come in the first place. So people need to be conscious, they need to be aware, they need to resist. And when I say resist, I am not encouraging violence. I discourage violence. I have to say it here so that I'm not accused of inciting people. You need to be aware that these people who are passing these laws do not know the laws that they are passing. They do not care about your well-being. However, you should come and demand accountability and make sure that everything is right. Otherwise, your very right to existence is being contested right now. Yes.
Thank you. So I'm told we just have, I think, a few minutes to wind up. I don't know if you have any other issues before I can ask you to give us your rallying call for other actors in the CSO space, or NGOs.
I think we can combine
yeah,
that
and the citizens. Yes, I'll start with you.
So, yeah, I want to, my rallying call, I want to compare the two situations. One, an owner of a dog comes up and says, you put a piece of meat here and you put money, maybe 100,000 shillings. And the dog is looking at you and you ask it to choose. Of course it will choose meat. Maybe a piece of meat that doesn't, because a kilo of meat is 15,000. A piece of meat is, let me put it at 5,000 at most. It's a big piece of meat. The dog has no capacity to know that with 100,000, you could buy a goat, several kilos of meat. This is what citizens do, including MPs, because MPs are also bribed to pass laws. So we are going into an election. We are struggling with a number of challenges coming out of bad laws, coming out of bad intentions of leaders, and on the other hand, you have the ignorance of leaders who are like a dog, and away it will run away with a piece of meat because it doesn't know the value of money. So we should stop treating our country as a piece of meat. We should look at the value of laws, the value of a vote, the value of decisions. That's the only way we shall reject such draconian proposals that will, first of all, violate the Constitution, violate international laws. If a country wants to dispense monies of another country in a basket and determine beneficiaries, violate our right of being as citizens, yet with a few, coins of money from the usual giver, like the UPDF bill, where the MPs sold out citizens because of their 100 million bribe. So they run away with a piece of meat, the MPs, because some of them will fall victims of this law. So when you have a parliament that can run away with a piece of meat, not looking at the value of the country and the need to make proper laws for the country, then we should know we are on our own and we should liberate ourselves through a ballot, make a protest vote, and vote for leaders that can really value citizenship and our country.
Thank you. Godber.
Yeah, no, let me put it this way. So this proposed law is going to come. And we have seen in the last couple of months how laws are enacted in Parliament, right? From the Coffee Bill, the UPDF Act, and that amendment to the Political Parties and Organizations Act. So this will follow the same trend. So in other words, I think last time I was when we were talking about the good and bad of, I think that was of 2022. I said the bad of 2022, I don't know if that's when Anita Mongo was elected speaker, but I said the bad of that year was election of Anita Mongo as speaker. Because I have never seen a citizen of a country that can be able to be so dangerous, act so dangerously for a country as beautiful as Uganda. Because Sarah talked about the meat. I think Anita Mongo is the lady probably who got a kilo of meat and then started giving pieces to these MPs because that's now how they operate. So for Ugandans out there who really love this country, who respect each other in terms of dignity, I would be there saying basically any member of parliament who has been in this parliament, especially given the election, we should all be ganging up to make sure that none of them comes back to parliament, because they don't deserve to be there, especially those on the NRM side. Of course, there are still some decent ones that you can count on, but when it comes to the things that are so dangerous in this country, they seem all to vote together. It's like they can afford to sacrifice this country for anything.
For a piece of meat.
For a piece of meat. I think that's what they have demonstrated. And therefore, if you don't want bad laws, if you are a citizen of Uganda who don't like bad laws, you love this country, because remember, what do we do? Most of us, the work we do, what we say it for our country, for the sake of our country. So if you are a citizen out there, you are a young person out there, and you really love your country, you really value it, and you respect it, you need to be looking at who is that person you are electing or you are voting for in the next election, right from the president, by the way, because people fear talking about not voting President Museveni. But I mean, President Museveni, I keep on saying, President Museveni is our past. He's not our future.
He hunted his animal.
Yeah, all these other guys that are around him, you're seeing all these MPs right from senior citizen Moses Ari and all these bush war people. They are all fighting like they are like fighting over bananas. All of them, everybody wants to be an MP. You are at 70, you are 76, you are running around with young people, you're fighting over people standing behind your back. I'm like, okay, what is it that has happened? What have we not done as a country to get these people to value their own dignity and value this country. So I think it's incumbent upon us as citizens to help retire them, because they have no personal capacity to retire. So if you are a citizen out there, you are a voter, you need to help all these people, President Museveni, the Anita Mongs of this country, the Moses Aris, the man who wants to die on nomination. We just need, out of respect for them, we need to help them to retire by voting them out. I think that's an obligation. I see it as an obligation on each one of us as citizens to help these guys retire, so that we can, because I think they are embarrassing themselves too much, in the process embarrassing our country. So we have now a duty as citizens to help them retire so that they can remain with the dignity.
Thank you, Godber. Robert.
Sure, thank you. And really, I like Godber's submission. We now need to wake up as citizens, and especially young people. Right now, as we speak in this studio, young people are the majority here. You can see we are surrounded by young people. Yeah. Young people, please take charge.
I thought you were talking about yourself.
No. Me, I'm not in the category of young people. Yes. Me, I'm seeing young people holding gadgets there. Please go beyond those gadgets now and question. Yes, and question. Ask yourself, think and ask. These people who are seeking our votes, our mandate, to allow them to go and legislate, are they really going to legislate on our behalf? Do they want to see change? When you see grandfathers trying to go back, and yet they cannot even speak. They can't speak. Look at them. They can't speak. What change are you looking for? So young people, it's not enough to go and camp at Phaneroo Ministries on Thursday for thousands and thousands. Think about it. While you are in praise and worship, that's good. But think about your country. How do you want this country to be governed? So let us take our responsibilities seriously and say, no, we must take charge of our country. We do not want to be in a country where roads are bad, where hospitals are not having drugs, where doctors are not there and are not catered for. Let's take charge of this country. In our small being, in our small entities, there is a change we can cause. Do not say this country is too big for you. No, play your role in your individual citizen and see that you cast your vote to where it should be, and make sure that this country, at least you say, I contributed to the progress. Do not go into a slumber and say, no, this is not my business, this is for politicians. We are all politicians and we all have a stake in this country. And the earlier, because we are now at crossroads, if you can see it, if you really are following the events in this country, we are at crossroads. We are at crossroads. Even those who are in institutions of government know it, but out of fear, they cannot speak out. Please take charge, young people. You are the majority. This country is not going to be changed by others other than we, the citizens.
Thank you. Thank you, Robert. Lastly, Nancy.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Judith, for inviting me to the show and for being part of this conversation. I want to confess that I honestly thought around senior 6, I thought, I'd spend my life going from my house to work and going back to read a book and going back to bed. Now
you're in the trenches.
Foot soldier.
I'm talking to politicians, getting their numbers, and it's not the life that I wanted. However, I know that I cannot have the life that I want without doing this bit or this much. I know that there are young people out there who say that they're going to change the system from the inside. To wash the system from the inside, you lie. This is why that system has the ability to co-opt all of you, and disinformation is worse than lack of information, because you come to deceive people that you're going to change the system, yet you're going to join the system. That is bad manners. Not everyone has to go to parliament. Not everyone has to have a political position. And right now, the other alternative, which would be non-political participation in changing our society, especially through civic society work, is being threatened, and you're not doing anything about it. I do not think that you actually have the best interest of this country at heart. So everyone should question those going for political positions, those trying to change the system from the inside, to actually talk about what they're going to do about the other side of the work. To conclude, lack of awareness is also a crime. You cannot say you don't know, yet you've not sought the information. You cannot say you didn't see it coming, yet you deliberately covered your eyes.
Sure.
You can take a selfie tomorrow. You can go to the beach tomorrow. However, if we ban this, if the people who are going to die next week ban this country down, you will have no beach. Therefore, I call upon young people to rise up and do something, play your part, write articles, record videos, encourage your friends, inform your neighbor, and go and vote.
Thank you.
I just
You-
wanted to add one message for the youth of Uganda. The Kenyan youth are commanding governance from the streets.
Sure.
The president, parliament, everybody must listen to the youth of Kenya. So as Uganda's youth go to, these...
Fanero.
I know. Not
Good.
that I'm against religion.
Tomorrow you
but
should
they
join
must
them
have
Thursday.
a balance.
Is Fanero
Don't
really-
just to go to
They
sleep
should
in
balance,
churches. You
yeah.
have a balance.
Yeah.
So as you go together in millions in churches where you know that your country is in trouble and it's you to rescue it, nobody is going to do it for you.
Sure.
You need to borrow it from Kenyan youth and put your numbers to use.
Thank you. Thank you very much to you, our listeners. We're glad you've been with us till this end of the conversation. As you can see on the screen, the hashtag is review of the review of NGO laws, and this has formed the basis of our conversation today. My name is Judith Atim. Thank you very much for being a part of this special edition of the Citizens Chat Show. Special thanks to my guests, Dr. Sarah Bireete, ED Center for Constitutional Governance, Ms. Nancy Caroline Ayot, feminist lawyer, Mr. Robert Kirenga, and to you, Mr. Godber Tumushabe. Thank you very much for making time and for sharing your insights into this conversation. We'll be back. We'll still have a series of these conversations, so do get interested, pick interest. This is something that's really, really important to you. Don't say legal issues are boring. They're not. They have dire consequences when you don't pay attention. Bye-bye for now.